The sky burned red over New York City. Marcus Caney stood at the window of the Arctic Research Station, watching the live feed on his tablet. Giant ships, each one the size of a small city, hung in the atmosphere above Earth's major capitals. They had arrived 3 days ago without warning. The aliens called themselves the Talvesh Hegemony. They didn't bother with diplomacy or first contact protocols. They simply attacked. Marcus watched as beams of white light shot down from the ships. Buildings vaporized instantly. The feed switched to London, then Tokyo, then Moscow. Every major city was being hit at the same time. The world's military forces tried to fight back, but their missiles exploded before reaching the alien vessels. Nuclear launch sites went dark before anyone could activate them. It was efficient. It was brutal. It was over in 72 hours. Commander Velketh stood on the bridge of his flagship watching Earth surrender with satisfaction. The planet had fallen exactly as predicted. These humans were a primitive species, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. They had fought with chemical rockets and atomic weapons. It was almost pathetic. Log the conquest, Velketh ordered his second officer. Earth, third planet of the Sol system, has been claimed by the hegemony. Total casualties, approximately 2 billion humans. Military resistance eliminated. Status secure. The Talvesh were experts at this. They had conquered 47 star systems over the past 3 centuries. Earth was simply number 48. A small, insignificant blue world with primitive inhabitants who barely understood quantum mechanics. Velketh pulled up the human database his team had hacked. Fascinating, he muttered. They actually thought they were alone in the universe. No contact with any other species. No defensive alliances. No warning systems. He laughed, a clicking sound from his triple-jointed jaw. They were sitting here like prey waiting for a predator. Down on Earth, in what remained of Geneva, a Talvesh news crew was recording footage of survivors. They wanted propaganda materials to show other species what happened when you resisted the hegemony. The reporter, a thin alien with silver skin, approached a group of humans being herded into a processing center. "You there?" the reporter said, his translator device converting his words into English. "Human male. Step forward." Marcus Caney looked up. He had made his way south from the Arctic station, traveling through the wreckage of human civilization. He was covered in dust and dried blood, but his eyes were clear and focused. "How do you feel?" the reporter asked. "Your planet has fallen. Your species has been conquered. What do you have to say?" Marcus looked at the camera. The ruins of the city stretched behind him. Smoke rose from 1,000 fires. The screams of the wounded and dying filled the air. He should have been broken, defeated, terrified. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't brave or defiant. It was cold and knowing and somehow terrifying in its calmness. It was the smile of someone who knew something the aliens didn't. "No comment," Marcus said quietly, still smiling that strange smile. The footage went viral across the hegemony's networks. Velketh himself watched it in his private quarters. Something about that human's expression bothered him. It was wrong. Humans should be desperate, not whatever that was. Probably just shock, Velketh told himself. Or insanity. War does that to primitives. He deleted the file and went back to planning the strip mining operations for Earth's core metals. What Velketh didn't know, what none of the Talvesh knew, was that Earth held secrets buried deep beneath its ice and stone. In the Antarctic Research Station where Marcus had been working, Dr. Sarah Chen sat in a locked server room. She was an astrophysicist, one of the best in her field. For the past 5 years, she had been studying something that had changed everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. The discovery had been made by accident. A mining operation in Antarctica had broken through into a massive underground cavern. Inside that cavern was a structure, not a natural formation, a building. And it was old, impossibly old. The structure contained writing in a language no one could read at first. But there were star charts, mathematical formulas, and DNA samples preserved in stasis chambers. Human DNA. But it was dated to over 10,000 years old, long before human civilization should have existed according to all known archaeology. Dr. Chen had been part of the team that decoded the writing. It told a story that seemed impossible. Humans didn't evolve on Earth. They came from somewhere else. Earth was a prison colony, established millennia ago by an advanced human civilization that spanned the galaxy. The original humans had fought a terrible war. A civil war that nearly destroyed their entire species. When it ended, the victors exiled the losers to a remote planet at the edge of the galaxy. They wiped their memories and left them with nothing but Stone Age technology. That planet was Earth. The ancient text said the exiled humans would remain on Earth until they either destroyed themselves or proved they had changed. Then, and only then, would they be allowed to return to the stars. Dr. Chen had spent years trying to find proof that the story was real. The government had classified everything, terrified of what it might mean. They had been planning to send a deep space probe to the coordinates listed in the ancient star charts, but then the Talvesh arrived. Now, as Chen sat in the ruins of her research station, she pulled up those coordinates on her computer. She had built something in secret over the past 2 years, a quantum entanglement communicator, based on partial schematics found in the ancient structure. If it worked, it could send a message faster than light across the entire galaxy. If the story was true, if there really were humans out there among the stars, they needed to know what was happening. Chen activated the device. It hummed to life, drawing massive amounts of power from the station's backup generators. She typed a simple message: "This is Earth, the homeworld. We are under attack. They are killing us. If you're out there, if you remember us, please come home." She pressed send and waited. Nothing happened, no reply. No indication the message had gone anywhere at all. Maybe the story was just a myth. Maybe humans really were alone. But Marcus Caney didn't think so. That's why he had smiled when the reporter asked him how he felt. He knew something the aliens didn't. He knew that humans had been waiting on Earth for 10,000 years, waiting for the exile to end, waiting for a reason to call out to the stars, and the Talvesh had just given them that reason. Somewhere out in the depths of space, in a region of the galaxy no Talvesh ship had ever reached, ancient stations began to wake up. Warning lights flickered on after centuries of darkness. Computer systems that had been dormant for millennia started processing data. A message had been received. The exile planet was calling for help. And the Terran remnant, the descendants of humanity's first galactic civilization, began to move. 6 months had passed since the conquest. Earth was unrecognizable. The Talvesh had wasted no time. Massive mining platforms floated above the Pacific Ocean, drilling deep into Earth's mantle to extract rare metals. Cities that had survived the initial attack were being dismantled, their materials recycled for hegemony construction projects. Humans who resisted were killed. Those who obeyed were enslaved. Marcus Caney moved through the shadows of what used to be Chicago. The city was now a work camp, with humans laboring under the watch of Talvesh guards. He wore stolen alien clothing and kept his head down, playing the part of a defeated survivor. But Marcus wasn't defeated. He was gathering information. His resistance cell operated from the ruins of an old subway system. There were 43 of them now, down from nearly 100 when they started. They weren't like other resistance groups who fought and died in pointless attacks. Marcus had ordered his people to do something different. They were learning. Every Talvesh patrol they ambushed, they didn't just kill. They captured them when possible, interrogated them, studied their equipment. Every computer system they hacked. They downloaded everything they could find. Every piece of alien technology they stole, they took apart to understand how it worked. Marcus had been special operations before the invasion. He knew that winning a war wasn't always about fighting. Sometimes it was about knowing your enemy better than they knew themselves. "Commander," one of his team members called out. Her name was Lisa Park, a former engineer. "I got another data chip from that patrol we hit yesterday. Their supply route schedules for the next 3 months. "Good," Marcus said. "Upload it to the archive. Make sure it's backed up to every server we have." "Why are we still collecting this stuff?" another fighter asked. His name was James, young and angry. "We should be hitting them hard, making them pay for what they did." Marcus looked at him with those cold, steady eyes. "We will, but not yet. Right now, we're in the information gathering phase." "Information gathering?" James nearly shouted. "They're killing us." "They're destroying our planet, and we're making sure they regret it," Marcus said quietly. "Trust the process." What James and most of the others didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just collecting information for the resistance. He was collecting it for someone else. Someone he hoped was out there listening. On the other side of the planet, Dr. Sarah Chen was still alive, working in a secret laboratory buried beneath the ruins of Beijing. The Talvesh didn't know she existed. They had marked her as killed in the initial bombardment. She had been sending her message every single day for 6 months. The same signal over and over broadcast into deep space using the quantum communicator. This is Earth, the homeworld. We need help. For 6 months there had been no response. Chen was beginning to think the ancient texts had been wrong. Maybe there were no humans in the stars. Maybe Earth really was alone. Then, on day 183, her equipment picked up something. A return signal. Chen's hands shook as she decoded the transmission. It was brief, just a few words in a language that was similar to English but oddly archaic. Message received. Exile acknowledged. The remnant remembers. Hold position. We are coming. Chen stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. They were real. The ancient civilization. The original humans. They existed and they were coming. 10,000 light years away. In a region of space the Talvesh had never explored. The Terran remnant prepared for war. Their territory spanned 300 star systems. They had technology that would seem like magic to most galactic civilizations. They had been isolated by choice, watching the younger species rise and fall, waiting for the day when Earth would call. The remnant had known about Earth all along. They had monitored the prison planet from afar, watching their exiled cousins slowly rebuild from nothing. They had wanted to help so many times, during the world wars, during the nuclear age, every time humanity came close to destroying itself. But the law was clear. The exiles could not return until they asked, until they proved they could unite. Until they were ready now, Earth had asked. And the request hadn't been for glory or power. It had been a cry for help. For survival. Admiral Theron Kane stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Retribution. He was looking at the message from Earth, reading it for the 100th time. Theron was over 200 years old, though he looked barely 40, thanks to advanced medical technology. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His family had carried the name Kane for hundreds of generations, waiting for the day they might return to the homeworld. Now that day had come. But not in triumph, in tragedy. How long until the fleet is ready? Theron asked his second-in-command. All ships will be in position within 2 weeks, Admiral. We'll have over 3,000 vessels, ranging from scouts to dreadnoughts. The hegemony has never seen anything like it. No, Theron said quietly.
They haven't, and they never will again after this. What are your orders, sir?
Theron looked out at the stars. We don't just go in shooting. First, we gather intelligence. I want to know everything about these Talvesh, every ship, every world, every weakness. We do this right. We do this perfectly. Because we only get one chance to show the galaxy what happens when you attack Earth. The Terran fleet moved into position, but they didn't charge toward Earth. Instead, they activated stealth systems that made them invisible to every known form of detection. Then they spread out across Talvesh space. Over the next 4 months, Terran scout ships infiltrated every hegemony system. They watched. They recorded. They mapped every military installation, every supply route, every command center. They hacked into hegemony networks and downloaded decades of military planning. The Talvesh never saw them. Never detected them. Never knew they were being studied like insects under a microscope. Meanwhile, strange things began happening in hegemony space. A patrol ship vanished near the border of Talvesh territory. No distress signal. No wreckage. Just gone. A colony garrison woke up one morning to find all their weapons missing. Every single gun, blade, and explosive had vanished overnight. The soldiers had been drugged in their sleep and never saw who did it. An admiral received a message on his private encrypted communication device. It contained photos of his family on their homeworld, going about their daily lives. Below the photos was a simple text message. We know where they are. We know where you sleep. We know everything. Velketh received reports of these incidents with growing concern. Something was wrong. Something was hunting them. But his scouts found nothing. His intelligence networks reported no threats. It's probably other hegemony factions, his advisors told him. Political rivals trying to undermine your authority. But Velketh wasn't convinced. He thought back to that human, the one who had smiled at the camera. That cold, knowing smile. He pulled up the footage again and watched it. And for the first time since the conquest, Velketh felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Back on Earth, Marcus received a message through a hidden quantum communicator. It was from Dr. Chen, they responded. They're coming. Hold position and continue intelligence gathering. Be ready. Marcus allowed himself a small smile, the same smile he'd shown the Talvesh reporter 6 months ago. What are you grinning about? James asked. Just thinking, Marcus said. The aliens think they won. They think Earth was easy prey, wasn't it? James asked bitterly. No, Marcus said. Earth was bait. And they took it. Now they're about to learn what human retribution really means. Commander Vel Keith stood in his war room, staring at the holographic display of hegemony space. Red markers indicated locations where ships had vanished or strange incidents had occurred. There were over 40 markers now, spread across 17 different systems. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. Random attacks with no pattern, no demands, no identification of the attackers. His intelligence officer, a veteran named Sector, stepped forward. Sir, I've analyzed all the incidents. They're not random. Someone is testing our defenses, learning our patrol routes, studying our response times. This is reconnaissance, not terrorism. Reconnaissance for what? We control this entire sector. There are no major military powers within 100 light years. Then perhaps, Sector said carefully, the threat is coming from farther away. Velketh dismissed the idea with a wave. Impossible. Long-range travel takes months, even with the best drives. We would have detected a fleet that size moving toward us. What Velketh didn't know was that the Terran remnant had spent 10,000 years perfecting faster-than-light travel. Their ships could cross the galaxy in weeks, and their stealth technology was centuries beyond anything the hegemony had ever encountered. On Earth, Marcus's resistance had evolved into something new. They weren't fighting anymore. They were becoming the aliens. Lisa Park had managed to reverse engineer a Talvesh communication device, then a weapon, then a piece of armor. With each captured piece of technology, the humans learned faster. They were adapting with a speed that would have terrified the hegemony if they had noticed. But the Talvesh didn't notice. They saw broken humans doing forced labor. They didn't see the underground factories where human engineers were building alien weapons. They didn't see the training camps where human soldiers were learning to operate hegemony equipment. Marcus had divided his people into specialized teams. Some focused on technology, others on intelligence gathering. A small group had even learned to speak the Talvesh language fluently. This weapon, Lisa said, holding up a Talvesh plasma rifle she had modified, I've increased its power output by 30%. It can punch through their armor now. Good, Marcus said. Make 50 more. But don't use them yet. When? James asked. He had stopped questioning Marcus's strategy after seeing how much progress they had made. When our friends arrive, Marcus said, we need to be ready to move when they do. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. The Talvesh had expanded beyond Earth. They had built mining stations on Mars, military outposts on Jupiter's moons, and a massive shipyard orbiting Saturn. They're getting comfortable, Marcus observed. That's good. Comfortable enemies make mistakes. What Marcus didn't tell his team was that he had been in direct contact with the Terran remnant for the past month. He had been sending them detailed intelligence about hegemony forces, positions, and capabilities. Every piece of data he gathered went straight to Bao, Admiral Theron Kane, and Theron was using that intelligence to plan the most devastating military operation in human history. The Terran fleet had grown to over 5,000 ships. They were positioned in a formation that surrounded all of hegemony space like a net. Each ship was still invisible, still waiting. Theron stood on his bridge reviewing the final attack plans. His staff had worked around the clock for weeks, calculating every detail. This wasn't going to be a battle. It was going to be an execution. Sir, his tactical officer said, we've identified every major military target in hegemony space. 417 orbital defense platforms, 632 military installations, and 2,347 warships. And civilian populations? Mapped and confirmed. We can strike every military target while avoiding civilian casualties. Our precision weapons are accurate to within 1 meter. Theron nodded. This was important. The Remnant had evolved beyond the brutal wars that led to Earth's exile. They didn't make war on innocents. They destroyed only those who made the choice to fight. What about their throne world? Theron asked. Heavy defenses, but mostly automated. We've hacked into their command network. When we're ready, we can shut down 80% of their systems remotely. Perfect. Theron looked at his crew. Begin the final countdown. In 72 hours, we strike. Send word to our contact on Earth. Tell him to prepare his people. Marcus received the message while conducting a raid on a Talvesh supply depot. The text was simple: 3 days. Be ready to move on our signal. Target package attached. He opened the attached file. It was a list of objectives for his resistance teams to hit simultaneously with the Remnant's attack. Velketh's personal palace was at the top of the list. Marcus smiled. They wanted him to capture the hegemony's supreme commander. Alive. Change of plans, he told his team. We're done hiding. Time to show these aliens what they woke up. Over the next 3 days, Marcus positioned his teams across the planet. Each group had a specific target. Each group had Talvesh weapons and equipment. Each group knew exactly what to do. On the hegemony throne world, a planet called Talveros, Velketh was growing paranoid. The strange incidents were increasing. Just yesterday, an entire military base had found all its computers wiped clean. Every file, every backup, every piece of data was gone. Someone is preparing for war, Velketh told his council. I can feel it. But I don't know who or when. Perhaps we should evacuate some of our forces, Sector suggested. Pull back to defensive positions and show weakness? Velketh snarled. Never, the hegemony does not retreat. We are the predators of this galaxy. Those would be his last words as a free being. At exactly midnight, Terran Standard Time, the attack began. 5,000 Terran remnant ships dropped their stealth systems simultaneously. They appeared in the skies above every hegemony world at the same moment, not attacking. Just hovering there, visible and massive and terrifying. Every screen in hegemony space, from personal devices to military displays to public broadcasts, suddenly showed the same image. Admiral Theron Kane stood in his crisp military uniform, his face calm and cold. I am Admiral Theron Kane of the Terran Remnant, he said. You know us as humans, though you thought we were a primitive species confined to one world. You were wrong. We are an empire of 1,000 worlds. We have watched the galaxy for 10,000 years. And you made a mistake. You attacked Earth. You attacked the homeworld. You broke our cradle. He paused, letting his words sink in across 47 star systems. We are the hand that rocks back. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Every military installation, every warship, every weapon, or we will demonstrate what human retribution truly means. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. The Terran ship still hovered in the sky, waiting. Velketh stared at his screen in horror. Find out where they came from, how many ships they have, what their capabilities are. His officers scrambled to respond, but their computers were already compromised. Their communication networks were flooded with interference. Their weapon systems were locked down by viruses they couldn't remove. The Terran Remnant had spent months infiltrating every hegemony system. Now they owned those systems completely. Sir, an officer said, his voice shaking. They're not just in orbit. They're everywhere. Every world we control, they're there. It's like they've been watching us for months. Velketh felt his blood run cold. That human who had smiled at the camera? He had known. Somehow he had known this was coming. Prepare all forces for combat, Velketh ordered. We will not surrender to primitives. We are the hegemony. But even as he gave the order, Velketh wondered if he had just made the last mistake of his life. The 72 hours passed like a countdown to the end of the world. The Talvesh hegemony mobilized every ship, every soldier, every weapon they had. Velketh refused to surrender. He sent messages to his fleet commanders across all 47 star systems. Fight to the last. Show these humans that the hegemony does not kneel. But fear had already spread through the hegemony ranks. These weren't the primitive humans they had conquered on Earth. These were beings with technology that seemed impossible. Ships that could stay hidden for months. Computer viruses that could shut down entire military networks. An intelligence network that knew everything about hegemony operations. When the deadline expired, Admiral Theron Kane gave one simple order. Execute Operation Reckoning. Show them what precision warfare looks like. Across 47 star systems, the Terran Remnant attacked. But it wasn't the chaotic violence of traditional war. It was surgery. It was art. It was devastating in its perfection. In the space of 30 minutes, every major military installation in hegemony territory was destroyed. Orbital defense platforms exploded in silent bursts of light. Shipyards were torn apart by missiles that hit with pinpoint accuracy. Ground-based weapon systems were reduced to molten metal by energy beams fired from orbit. Not one civilian structure was touched. Not one residential area was damaged. The Terran targeting systems were so precise that they could destroy a military command center while leaving the hospital next door completely intact. The hegemony fleet tried to fight back. Over 2,000 warships engaged the Terran vessels. It was a massacre. Terran ships moved with impossible speed and agility. Their weapons hit from distances the hegemony couldn't even detect. Their shields absorbed Talvesh fire like it was nothing. In the first hour of combat, the hegemony lost 800 ships. The Terran remnant lost 0. Fall back, hegemony admirals screamed across communication channels. Retreat to defensive positions. But there was nowhere to retreat to. Every defensive position had already been destroyed. Every safe harbor was occupied by Terran ships. Every escape route was blocked. The hegemony was surrounded, outgunned and outmatched in every possible way. On Earth, Marcus's resistance struck at the same moment. His teams had been positioned at every major Talvesh installation on the planet. When the signal came, they moved with military precision. Using stolen alien weapons and equipment, they looked like Talvesh soldiers until it was too late. The mining platforms over the Pacific Ocean exploded as resistance fighters detonated their reactor cores. The garrison controlling North America found itself under attack from soldiers who knew every weak point in their defenses. Within hours, Earth's human population was rising up everywhere, supported by weapons and intelligence from Marcus's network. The Talvesh on Earth tried to call for reinforcements, but there were no reinforcements coming. Every hegemony ship in orbit around Earth had been destroyed in the first 30 minutes of the Terran attack. Marcus led a hand-picked team toward their most important objective, capturing Commander Velketh. The hegemony leader had fled Earth months ago, returning to his throne world of Talveros. But Marcus had been planning for this moment. The Terran remnant had given him access to their stealth technology and provided him with a small ship. Now Marcus and his team were descending toward the palace where Velketh was hiding. Security's down, Lisa Park reported from the pilot's seat. The remnant hacked their systems like they promised. We've got a clear path to the command center. Take us in, Marcus ordered. They landed on the palace roof. The building was massive, a monument to hegemony power and arrogance. But its defenses were worthless against Terran technology. Locked doors opened at Lisa's command. Security systems stayed silent. Guard patrols were rerouted by false orders sent through their own communication network. Marcus and his team moved through the palace like ghosts. They encountered no resistance until they reached the throne room itself. Velketh sat on his command throne, surrounded by his personal guard. He was watching the holographic displays showing the destruction of his empire. 47 worlds, all under simultaneous attack. His fleet being systematically destroyed, his bases reduced to rubble. How? He whispered. How did we not see this coming? You did see it, Marcus said, stepping into the throne room. Velketh spun around. His guards raised their weapons, but Marcus's team was faster. Plasma bolts dropped the guards before they could fire a shot. Velketh stared at the human who now stood before him. He recognized the face. The man from the news footage. The one who had smiled. You. Velketh breathed. You knew. Even then you knew this was coming. I knew you had made a mistake, Marcus said calmly. I knew that attacking Earth would wake something you couldn't handle. And I was right. What are you? Velketh asked. We thought humans were primitive, weak. You fell in 3 days. We fell because we were alone, Marcus said. But we're not alone anymore. You helped us remember that. You gave us a reason to call out to the stars, and the stars answered. Outside, the sounds of battle echoed through the palace. Terran ships were landing, deploying troops to secure the planet. The hegemony throne world, the center of their empire, was being conquered in the same amount of time it had taken them to conquer Earth. 72 hours. What happens now? Velketh asked. You'll execute me? Make an example? Marcus smiled that cold smile again. No, killing you would be mercy. You're going to do something much harder. You're going to survive. You're going to watch as everything you built is taken apart. And you're going to help us make sure it never happens again. He gestured to his team. Take him. As they dragged Velkeith away, Marcus activated his communicator. Admiral Kane, this is Marcus Kane on the ground. Primary objective secured. Velkeith is in custody. Theron Kane's voice came through, strong and clear. Well done, Commander. The family name continues to prove its worth. Marcus paused. Family name? You didn't know? Theron said with amusement. The name Caney has been passed down for 300 generations in the Remnant. We were one of the original exile families from Earth. You and I share ancestors from 10,000 years ago. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. All this time, he had been working toward a destiny written millennia before his birth. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now, Theron said. We finish this. Bring Velkeith to me. It's time for him to broadcast his surrender to what's left of his empire. 6 hours later, every screen in former hegemony space showed the same image. Velkeith, stripped of his command uniform and rank insignia, stood before the camera. Behind him, Admiral Theron Kane and Commander Marcus Caney stood side by side, representing humanity united across time and space. I am Commander Velkeith, he said, his voice hollow. Former Supreme Leader of the Talvish Hegemony, I hereby announce the unconditional surrender of all hegemony forces to the Terran Remnant and the people of Earth. The war is over. We have lost, he paused, struggling with the words. I was wrong. We were all wrong. We thought Earth was defenseless. We thought humans were primitive prey. We didn't know. We didn't understand. Humanity is not one world. It is an empire that spans the galaxy, and we attacked their homeworld. We broke their cradle. Now they have shown us what retribution means. The camera focused on Theron Kane. The Talvesh hegemony is dissolved effective immediately, Theron announced. All occupied worlds will be returned to self-governance. All enslaved populations will be freed. All hegemony military forces will be disarmed and disbanded. Reparations will be paid to Earth for the next 50 years, using the entirety of your industrial capacity. He looked directly into the camera. Let this be a lesson to the galaxy. Earth is protected. Humanity is united. Touch the homeworld and the stars will answer. Attack one of us and you attack all of us. And we do not forget. We do not forgive. We wait. And when we move, empires fall. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, species that had never heard of Earth before now knew one thing for certain. Humans were not to be underestimated ever again. 20 years had passed since the day the Terran remnant appeared in Earth's sky. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Earth, looking down at the planet that had almost died. It was hard to believe this was the same world she had seen burning 2 decades ago. The scars were gone now. Cities had been rebuilt, not just restored but elevated with technology from the remnant. Forests that had been burned grew again, helped by advanced terraforming. The oceans, once poisoned by mining operations, were clean and full of life. Earth was healing. And humanity was thriving. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice said behind her. Chen turned to see Admiral Theron Kane, now much older but still commanding. He had chosen to stay in the Sol system after the war, helping to rebuild the connection between Earth and the remnant. It's miraculous, Chen said. 20 years ago I thought Earth was finished. Now look at it. That's what human determination looks like, Theron said. We don't stay down. We adapt, we overcome, we rebuild. The orbital station where they stood was a testament to that. It was a joint project between Earth and the remnant, a massive structure that served as both a shipyard and a university. Humans from both civilizations worked together here, sharing knowledge that had been separated for 10,000 years. The reunion had not been without difficulties. The remnant had evolved differently during their isolation. Their culture, their technology, even their language had changed. But the connection was still there. The shared DNA, the shared history, the shared name, human. Now 2 branches of humanity were becoming one again. The Terran Concordat, they called it. A union of Earth and the remnant, stronger together than either could be alone. Have you seen the latest enrollment numbers? Chen asked. Over 10,000 students from Earth are studying in remnant universities, and 5,000 from the remnant are here, learning about Earth's history and culture. Knowledge exchange, Theron said with satisfaction. The best weapon against ignorance and isolation. If we had done this 10,000 years ago, maybe the Civil War would never have happened. The Civil War. The reason for Earth's exile. The dark chapter in human history that both civilizations now taught their children, making sure they understood the cost of turning against each other. Never again was the lesson. Humanity would never fracture like that again. On the surface of Earth, in what had been Geneva, Marcus Caney walked through the Memorial Gardens, the place where billions of names were carved into black stone walls, every human who had died during the Talvesh conquest. Every victim of the invasion. Marcus visited this place often. He had been there the day it opened, watching as survivors read the names of their loved ones. He had seen people collapse in grief, touching the carved letters with shaking hands. But he had also seen something else. Determination. Anger transformed into purpose. A collective promise that this would never happen again. Below the memorial walls was an inscription that Marcus had helped write. They conquered our world in 3 days. We conquered their empire in 3 days. The difference? We let them live to remember. This is what human retribution truly means. Not mindless destruction. Not genocide, justice, accountability, and memory. A young woman approached him. She was a student, maybe 20 years old, born during the invasion, raised in the aftermath. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Commander Caney?" "I am," Marcus said. "I'm writing a paper about the resistance, about how you prepared for the remnant's arrival. Can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "When you smiled at that camera during the conquest, did you really know the remnant was coming? Or were you just hoping?" Marcus thought about that day. The ruins around him. The screams of the dying. The alien reporter asking how he felt. "Both," he said honestly. Dr. Chen had sent the signal, but we didn't know if anyone would answer. I smiled because I believed that humanity was more than just Earth. I believed that we weren't alone. And I believed that anyone who attacked us would regret it. And you were right. I was lucky," Marcus corrected. If the remnant hadn't existed, that smile would have been the delusion of a desperate man watching his world die. But they did exist. And they came. That's the lesson you should write about. Not my smile. The fact that when humans call for help, other humans answer. The student nodded, making notes on her tablet. "One more question," she said. "Do you think the hegemony learned their lesson?" Marcus looked toward the sky, where Talvesh refugees now lived on a designated planet at the edge of Terran space. After the war, the remnant had done something unexpected. They had given the surviving Talvesh a world to rebuild on. Not as conquerors, as refugees, yes, Marcus said. They learned, and so did everyone else. The lesson had spread across the galaxy. The story of how the Talvesh hegemony fell in 3 days became legendary. Other aggressive empires, ones that had been planning their own conquests, suddenly reconsidered. Species that had been considering attacking their neighbors thought twice. Humanity had shown the galaxy something important. They had the power to destroy completely, but they chose not to. They had defeated the hegemony with such overwhelming force that resistance was impossible. And then they had shown mercy, but it was mercy with teeth, mercy that came with consequences. The Talvesh would spend the next generation paying reparations. Their leaders, including Velketh, were not executed but were put to work. They taught at universities about their mistakes. They helped rebuild Earth. They lived with the shame of what they had done. Commander Velketh himself was now a professor at the Academy of Galactic History on Earth. Every semester, he taught a course called The Hubris of Empire, a Case Study. Marcus had sat in on one of his lectures once. It was surreal, watching the former hegemony supreme commander standing before human students, explaining how he had underestimated humanity and doomed his own civilization. "We thought we were predators," Velketh told his class. "We believed ourselves to be the apex species. We had conquered 47 worlds. We had never met serious resistance. And then we found Earth, a single world, primitive compared to us. Or so we thought." He pulled up the footage that had haunted him for 20 years. Marcus, smiling at the camera. This human knew something we didn't. He knew that Earth wasn't alone. He knew that somewhere in the galaxy, his people's ancient civilization still existed, and he knew that attacking Earth would wake them up. We didn't conquer a planet. We attacked a prison that was being guarded from afar, and when the guard came back, we were crushed. A student raised her hand. "Professor Velketh, do you feel you were treated fairly after your defeat?" Velketh was quiet for a moment. "Fairly? The Terran remnant could have exterminated my entire species. They had the weapons. They had the justification. We had committed genocide against billions of humans. Instead, they gave us a chance to rebuild. They forced us to pay for our crimes with labor and resources, not blood. Was it fair? It was more than fair. It was mercy we didn't deserve. That was the real lesson. That was what human retribution truly meant. In the Terran Concordat headquarters, a massive structure orbiting Luna, representatives from dozens of species gathered. The Concordat had become a power in galactic politics, not through conquest but through reputation. When disputes arose between species, they came to the Concordat for mediation. When pirates threatened trade routes, they requested Concordat protection. When wars threatened to spiral out of control, Concordat diplomats were called in to negotiate peace. Humanity had become the galaxy's reluctant guardians. Not because they sought power, but because others recognized something important. Humans were strong enough to enforce peace, but wise enough not to abuse that power. Admiral Theron Kane, now serving as the Concordat's military commander, explained it to new recruits this way: we don't conquer. We don't enslave. We don't expand through force. But we don't forget either. We protect the innocent. We defend the helpless. And if you attack us or anyone under our protection, we will demonstrate what happens when you wake up humanity. We will show you what retribution looks like, and you will live to regret it. That was the creed now taught to every human child, whether born on Earth or in the remnant territories. Strength with responsibility, power with mercy, memory with purpose. Marcus Caney, now retired from active duty, sat in his apartment overlooking the rebuilt New York City. Dr. Sarah Chen sat beside him, both of them looking out at the glittering skyline. Was it worth it? Chen asked quietly. All that suffering? All those deaths? Could we have avoided it somehow? Marcus thought about that question. He thought about the billions who died, the years of slavery under the hegemony, the pain and trauma that still haunted survivors. I don't know if we could have avoided it, he said finally. The Telvesh were going to attack someone. They were predators looking for prey. We just happened to be the ones they found. But now, Chen pressed. Now the galaxy knows better, Marcus said. Now they understand that humanity isn't prey. We're the thing that hunts hunters. We're the civilization that was so dangerous to itself that we had to be exiled for 10,000 years. And when we came back together, when Earth and the Remnant united, we became something the galaxy had never seen before. And what's that? Marcus smiled. Not the cold smile from the invasion. A real smile. A proud smile, hope, he said.